right. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome one and welcome all to the one and the only Junk Shop Library channel, where under normal circumstances, we read the King James Bible verse by verse and rip at a new asshole as we go. We had a little bobble earlier because old Junk Shop decided to get a little ambitious with regard to technology and tried to run the stream live through an as yet untroubleshot scene in OBS, which in retrospect was not a good idea. But here we are, we're back. Thank you all so much for joining me yet again on this beautiful, beautiful Wednesday. All right. Folks are starting to stream in. My second screen chat has crashed, but that's okay because I can see the chat live through StreamYard this time. All right. Let me take a quick moment to say hello to everybody who's managed to join us live this time. My wonderful wife, Julie LaVoice, is in the chat. Joan is with us and wishing us well. I see Godless Sewing. I see Linda, Mama Atheist, Mark Caesar, for whom it is the middle of the goddamn night. Paul Kamish, Aunt Jur. All right, folks streaming in as we begin to stream out. So, thank you so much yet again. Speaking of thanks, you know what we have to do now? We have to figure out if Junk Shop knows his left from his right. Oh, be still my beating heart. I got it twice in a row. I may have a future in this yet. Thank you, Linda. I do appreciate that. I think we're going to hopefully not. Good Lord, my hair has gone insane again today. Mad Scientist is my look. All right. B has found us again. Amiga Nuts has found us again. Angie Dell has found us. All right. It's so good to see everybody here with me today. And as I said, speaking of thanks, I got to shout out special thanks to my fantabulous, wonderful cadre of patrons. These are the folks who have seen it in their heart and found room in their wallet, more importantly, in these trying times, to jump over to patreon.com/junkshoplibrary and become a contributing member for as little as $1 a month. I got a shill, y'all. You know how it is. All right. You see those folks' names streaming at the bottom of the screen and in alphabetical order. They are B, Brainbug, Mark Caesar, Paul Kamish, Kim, Linda, The Lone Wanderer, Math Pig, Mama Atheist, Nikki Rain, and Santy the Sane. Thank you all so very, very much for everything you do. It really does mean the world, and it has made all the difference, although you wouldn't have known it to see my stream earlier, but that was a Junk Shop error and nobody's fault but mine. Geo Sam has found us again. Hey, Kim, good to see you. And that catches us up, except for Ed. Hey, Ed, good to see you. Welcome to you all. All right. For anyone joining us after the fact, you're not going to have any idea what I'm babbling on about because hopefully by the time you see this, I will have taken the earlier stream from today down because ain't nobody got time for that. Appreciate you bearing with us. All right, we are congregated here today to launch yet again into the surprisingly horrible book of Esther. We were discussing last time how many of us were taught the book of Esther as children, but a lot of the really gross stuff was left out. Though if you were anything like me, you were taught about what the method of execution known as impalement was, but not about the ceremonial test out your wives royal rape that kicks off the book. It's the Bible, y'all. It's not for children or the faint of heart. God damn. All righty. Is there more ado to do further? I'm trying to think. I don't think there is. So, without further ado, oh, nice. Grumpy Old Dude says he's got 191 subs, which is only 9 away from doing something special. Y'all, if you're not subscribed to Grumpy Old Dude, y'all need to wait until the end of my stream and then hop over to his channel and hit that subscribe button. He does fantastic comment doing what we all try to do around here, stand against hate. Except he's better at it than a lot of folks are. I see you, Ed. Do good work, my friend. Never Again is back with us. Good to see you. All righty. And Amiga Nuts, if I hadn't already shouted you out, I see you now, and I'm not completely losing my mind. I'm just a little flustered from earlier. Thank you for dropping the links, my friend. All right. I've procrastinated long enough. We got to do this horrible, horrible book if we're ever going to get through this horrible, horrible book, which, as some of you may know, suspect, or remember, we have, in fact, renamed. Welcome to the Big Book of War Crimes and Outdated Regulations, Utter Madness and Abuse. More abuse in this one than madness, but what can you do? All right. So when we left off at the end of chapter 5, Mr. Haman, on the advice of his wife, Zeresh, had caused what was it? Somebody did the math for me last time. I think it was Aunt Jer did the math for me. It ended up being like 175 feet high, this gallows on which Haman is going to have Mordecai hanged for having the effrontery not to grovel before him. No, Mark Caesar, it is indeed just coffee. What do y'all want? Y'all want to see it? Well, it says so. It says so on the mug, so of course it must be true. Uh, 75. Okay, still real friggin' tall. Thank you, Amiga Nuts. It was Godless Granny. That's right. Okay. All right. Can y'all tell I don't like this book? I don't want to do this because then I got to talk about it. First, I got to read it, then I got to talk about it. It's just gross upon gross. All right. Chapter 6, for those of y'all following along at home. On that night could not the king sleep, and he commanded to bring the book of the records of the Chronicles. And they were read before the king. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthana and Teresh, 2 of the king's chamberlains, the keepers of the door, who sought to lay hands on the king Ahasuerus. And the king said, "What honor and dignity hath been done to Mordecai for this?" Then said the king's servants that ministered unto him, "There is nothing done for him." And the king said, "Who is in the court?" Now Haman was come into the outward court of the king's house to speak unto the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him. And the king's servants said unto him, "Behold, Haman standeth in the court." And the king said, "Let him come in." So Haman came in, and the king said unto him, "What shall be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor?" Now Haman thought in his heart, "To whom would the king delight to do honor more than to myself?" And Haman answered the king, "For whom the king delighteth to honor, let the royal apparel be brought, which the king useth to wear, and the horse that the king rideth upon, and the crown royal which is set upon his head, And let this apparel and horse be delivered to the hand of one of the king's most noble princes, that they may array the man withal, whom the king delighteth to honor, and bring him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaim before him, Thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delighteth to honor. Then the king said to Haman, Make haste, and take the apparel and the horse, as thou hast said, and do even so to Mordecai the Jew, that sitteth at the king's gate. Let nothing fail of all that thou hast spoken. Then took Haman the apparel and the horse, and arrayed Mordecai, and brought him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaimed before him, Thus shall it be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor. And Mordecai came again to the king's gate. But Haman hasted to his house mourning and having his head covered. And Haman told Zeresh his wife and all his friends everything that had befallen him. Then said his wise men and Zeresh his wife unto him, If Mordecai be of the seed of the Jews, before whom thou hast begun to fall, thou shalt not prevail against him, but shalt surely fall before him. And while they were yet talking with him, came the king's chamberlains, and hasted to bring Haman unto the banquet that Esther had prepared. And there we have chapter 6. All right. Well, let not it be said that there's nothing funny in the Bible, because that shit is hilarious. Alrighty, let's see here. We've got, Purple Rhymes with Orange has found us again. Thank you so much for joining us. Grumpy Old Dude says it's the best horror story ever. It's up there. Doc Fearsome, hello. Alrighty. Well, poor Haman. Just can't buy a break, can he? When last we saw Mr. Haman, he had been dismissed from the banquet royal, which Queen Esther had prepared and specifically invited only himself and King Ahasuerus. And he had gone home, passed by old man Mordecai at the gate, not gotten properly groveled before, gone home and bellyached and moaned to his wife, and built a gallows in the middle of the fucking night on which to hang Mr. Mordecai at the behest of Zeresh, his wife. Well, this selfsame night, the demons of insomnia pay visit to Ahasuerus, King of Kings. And so he decides he needs a bedtime story to lull his ass to sleep, and he has a history book read to him by his servants. And they're reading the story of the Chronicles of the Kingdom, and they get down to pretty recent history, wherein two of the king's servants had conspired against him, and old Mordecai had heard about it because they were discussing it right out fucking loud in front of God and Mordecai and everybody right there at the gate of the town. Hey, Brainbug, welcome. Good to see you. And old Mordecai had sent word of this to Queen Esther. Queen Esther had taken word of this to King, and King had had the two fellows hanged. Well, this is sufficient to wake up Ahasuerus, King of Kings. He says, now, hang on just 1 minute. Somebody remind me, because I don't remember. So somebody remind me what we did to honor this old man Mordecai who saved my life, literally. And the servants, they page through the book, and there's no record of anything being done for old man Mordecai. The king says, well, shit, we got to fix this. And Ahasuerus, king of kings, being a little bit short on ideas, as he so often is, you'll notice that throughout this book, whenever Ahasuerus, king of the book of Esther, whenever Ahasuerus, king of kings, has the opportunity to make a choice or a decision, he always has to ask somebody else for suggestions. So he asks his servants, he says, who among the nobles, who around here might have an idea that's hanging out? And they look out the window, because apparently Ahasuerus, king of kings, can't be bothered to look out the window his own damn self. They look out the window and they see Mr. Haman waiting in the courtyard, or crossing the courtyard, or just entering the courtyard. It's a little bit vague, as is so often the case in this fucking book when it's not unbelievably, unbearably, untenably specific. And they say, well, your Grand Vizier, Haman, is hanging out in the courtyard. Let's bring him in. So they bring him in. And the king says, hey, Mr. Haman, there's this fella, this guy, this person, who I would like to bestow ultimate honor upon. What do you recommend? And Mr. Haman says in his heart, well, it's got to be me, doesn't it? I mean, after all, upon who else would the king bestow ultimate honor were it not my special ass? And he says, what you should do is you should send your best horse and your finest robes to whoever it is. And then you should have one of your most honored princes take this fanciness to whoever it is, and you should have whoever it is conveyed with pomp and circumstance through the streets of the city, being heralded as him whom the king delighteth to honor. I think that would probably be sufficient. The king says, very well. You are one of my most faithful and trusted princes, so I entrust this task to you. Take my best robes and my finest horse, and go find old man Mordecai, the Jew, and do as you have said. Well, old man Haman knows better than to argue with Ahasuerus, king of kings. He's going to keep at this until it's actually probably pronounced closer to Haman, but I was taught the story with it being pronounced Haman, and I knew if I went with a closer pronunciation, I'd be bouncing back and forth and stumbling over myself the entire time that that I was trying to read and or tell this story. So I decided to err on the side of less obtrusive. Never Again asks, how many King of Kings have we had over history, do you think? A whole fucking ton of a lot. Physics. So Haman decides he better not argue with Mr. Ahasuerus, even despite the fact that the man can't apparently tie his own shoes without somebody making a suggestion for him. But it's a little too late for Mr. Haman to go back on his suggestion. So he takes the fancy robes and he takes a spiffy horse and rustles up old man Mordecai. And he puts old man Mordecai in the robes and on the horse and heralds him through the street of the city saying, yep, king likes him. King likes him. He's the best. He's the best. All hail old man Mordecai, which sitteth at the gate of the city, except today he sitteth upon the king's best horse. Well, having made a circuit of the city and dropped old man Mordecai off at the gate and presumably retrieving the royal robes and the royal horse and taking them back to the royal closet and the royal stables, respectively, Haman puts something on his head and goes back to his house and starts belly aching and moaning about this to his wife. And just as he finishes this story, the king's servants turn up at his door to take him to see Ahasuerus, king of kings, again. At which point, Haman has got to be ready to bang his head against the wall. Because last time he got summoned into the royal presence, it ain't work out so good for him. But no, it's just to remind him of, hey, Donna, good to see you. It's just to remind him about the banquet, the second banquet being thrown by Queen Esther that he's been invited to along with the king. And there the chapter drops. I mean, even despite the fact that he's manifestly evil, you remember, because he tried to contrive a genocide, and for that matter, still is in the process of contriving a genocide, because it's not yet the 13th day of Adar, and that's the date on which all of the Jews are going to be massacred by order of the king, by way of the order of Haman, because old man Mordecai wouldn't bow down, and he got so bent out of shape that he decided he was going to massacre the entire race to which the old man belongs. I completely lost track of that sentence. Me and my dependent clauses, I swear to God. All right. So anyway, he's got to go to yet another dinner party. Poor Haman. Got to go to another royal party thrown by the queen, just himself and the king. It's a hard, hard life Grand Vizier Haman is living. Sucks to be him. Goddamn. Oh, I know what I was. No, I don't. It was there like a gnat on the tip of my nose, and as soon as I moved, it went flying away. I don't remember what I was going to say. Poor Haman. Sucks to be him. Julie, somehow that sounds dirty. All right, chapter 7. I'm going to remember to consistently put these things on one of these days. We may be in the middle of fucking Malachi by the time that happens, but I'll remember. So the king and Haman came to banquet with Esther the queen. And the king said again unto Esther on the second day at the banquet of wine, What is thy petition, Queen Esther? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? It shall be performed, even to the half of the kingdom. Then Esther the queen answered and said, If I have found favor in thy sight, O king, and if it please the king, let my life be given me at my petition, and my people at my request. For we are sold, I and my people, to be destroyed, to be slain, and to perish. But if we had been sold for bondmen and bondwomen, I had held my tongue, although the enemy could not countervail the king's damage. Then the king Ahasuerus answered and said unto Esther the queen, Who is he, and where is he, that durst presume in his heart to do so? And Esther said, The adversary and enemy is this wicked Haman. Then Haman was afraid before the king and the queen. And the king, arising from the banquet of wine in his wrath, went into the palace garden. And Haman stood up to make request for his life to Esther the queen, for he saw that there was evil determined against him by the king. Then the king returned out of the palace garden into the place of the banquet of wine, and Haman was fallen upon the bed where Esther was. Then said the king, Will he force the queen also before me in the house? As the word went out of the king's mouth, they covered Haman's face. And Harbona, one of the chamberlains, said before the king, Behold also the gallows 50 cubits high, which Haman had made for Mordecai, who had spoken good for the king, standeth in the house of Haman. Then the king said, Hang him thereon. So they hanged Haman on the gallows that he had prepared for Mordecai. Then was the king's wrath pacified. And that's the end of chapter 7. That's also the end of where we were taught this story when I was a child. And there's 3 more chapters left to go in the book of Esther. I mean, really? Okay, well, if I must, I must. And yes, exactly. Thank you, Angie. Precisely. Weird fucking book. Never Again says, I did it. I just said it. Oh, Jesus. Does that count as, oh, Lord? Do you have to take a piece of clothing off according to Math Pig rules now? Okay, so Haman and Mordecai get to the, not Mordecai, goddamn. Haman and Ahasuerus get to the banquet, and the banquet goes through the first day, and the banquet goes through the second day, and the banquet goes into the night of the second day. And finally, the heart of the king being merry with wine again. Now, the thing you got to remember is that we have already taken more time in real time discussing this story than this story actually takes up. Normally, it's way the other way around. Normally, we go through the reign of 3 kings in the book of Chronicles, and then he died, and then he died, and he did evil in the sight of the Lord, and then he died. And we do that in the space of like 2 or 3 chapters. That's normally what happens. But the chronology here is, once we get out of the backstory, which lasts for some time, like the first 4 or 5 chapters. I beg your pardon. Cover your cough, y'all. Remember, the Rona remains. So once we get out of the backstory, the chronology is Mordecai tells Esther about the plot against the Jewish people by Haman. The queen takes her life in her hands, goes to Ahasuerus to invite him to a dinner party. They throw the dinner party, and the king offers functionally whatever she wants, along with the formal hyperbolic declarative up to the half of my kingdom, which was a very common until then, or functionally everything in the ancient world. You see it in the book of 1,000 Nights and a Night. and fairy tales and all kinds of stories coming out of the ancient world. And she says, tell you what, come back tomorrow and we'll have another dinner party and I'll ask you then. Okay, so the next night is when all of this shit takes place. Haman going home, complaining, building the gallows, going to the king to get permission to kill Mordecai on the gallows, being sent out the next day to do the ride of honor with Mordecai through the city, going back home, complaining to his wife. The following day is when the banquet takes place. The second day after that. So I mean, if that whole chronology had started, today's Wednesday, Monday morning, we'd functionally still we'd be a little ahead of in real time. Or I guess we'd actually be in real time because it'd be tonight that this part of the story takes place. Okay. Hey, Lone Wanderer, good to see you. Yes, exactly. The Arabian Nights, some of which take place in China. So the feast goes into its second night, the heart of the king being merry with wine. He asks Queen Esther what it is that she's been building up all this time to ask him. Because obviously there's got to be something. Because who would want to throw parties for the king after not having seen him for 30 days if there wasn't something special? Big with the self-confidence, Mr. Ahasuerus. Can't make any decisions by himself. Can't imagine any reason anybody'd want to see him except to ask something of him. And Queen says, well, here's the thing. You may have noticed I'm not Persian. But there's somebody who's out to exterminate my entire race, of which I am a part, and I'm afraid I'm going to get swept up in the genocide. And the king says, who? Who has the effrontery to create a genocide that will wipe out my queen as well? And she says, it's your buddy over here. And the king is so pissed off that he decides to go for a walk in the garden to settle his mind. Because there's none of his nobles around he can ask for advice, which is normally what he does. At every juncture throughout this entire fucking book, whenever King Ahasuerus has encountered a juncture of decision, he has turned to his nobles. But he doesn't have that option right now because this is a private dinner party for just him and the person against whom he has to make a decision. So he goes out to look at the rose bushes. Well, Mr. Haman gets real freaked out because Ahasuerus has a way of inflicting the capital punishment upon people who cross him. And so naturally, he decides that the best thing to do is plead for his life with the woman who has just functionally condemned him to death. So fine, plead for your life. Understandable. But the way he chooses to plead for his life is to jump on the queen's couch with her. And as luck would have it, just as he climbs up on the queen's couch to make his case, the king comes back in and says, not only does he want to genocide my wife out of existence, but he's going to fuck her first, too? I'll give you a guess as to which element of this story was left out of our elementary school Bible curriculum. Which brings us to... There was a comment I wanted to back up to and pull up on the screen because... Yep, there he is. Exactly, right? Who'da thunk it? Somebody cherry-picked the big book of outdated regulations and genocide and rape and murder and however that long fucking title we decided to make up instead was. So while the king is busy reprimanding Mordecai for being in the queen's bed with her, his servants speak up and say, "Hey, you know what? If you're of a mind to do an execution of him for this effrontery which he had, he recently built, like yesterday, a 50 cubit high gallows on which to hang the queen's adoptive father, old Mordecai, the man you had paraded through the street for having saved your life yesterday." And Ahasuerus says, "Why, what an exaggeratedly specific thing you have uncovered, my servants, and what would be the poetic justice and how delicious would be the irony here. Take him and do with him as you have said." So they take Mr. Haman out and they impale him on the 50 cubit gallows that he has constructed in his backyard. And that's where the story ended, as far as my Sunday school teachers and parents and whatnot were concerned. Which leaves me confused and a little bit on the nervous side. Because like I said, there's 3 more chapters to go. And we left out, you know, my teachers and parents and whatnot left out when I was a kid the part of the story where Ahasuerus test drives all of the virgins of the kingdom until he gets to Esther and she finds favor in his sight. And also the part where Haman pleads for his life by climbing on top of the king, and the king comes back in and is afraid that his wife is getting fucked right in front of his eyes. So what the hell is in chapters 8, 9, and 10? Let's find out, shall we? I mean, sweet Jesus. I mean, I knew there was stuff left out, but God all fucking mighty. Now, having said that, I hadn't revisited the story of Esther since I was probably, Jesus, I stopped going to church when I was what? 17, 18, something like that. And all right, be safe, Ed. We'll see you later. Yeah, exactly. Julie points out Esther clearly had certain talents. Maybe it was just the exotic nature of her. Or maybe she was just good in the sack. Yeah, so I mean, I hadn't revisited this story since I was probably about 12, 13 years old. But there's some stuff I would remember had it been taught. So let's see what happens in chapter 8. While Mr. Haman's body is sliding slowly down the 50 cubit high gallows that he erected in his backyard. Chapter 8. On that day did the king Ahasuerus give the house of Haman the Jew's enemy unto Esther the queen. And Mordecai came before the king, for Esther had told what he was unto her. And the king took off his ring, which he had taken from Haman, and gave it unto Mordecai. And Esther set Mordecai over the house of Haman. And Esther spake yet again before the king, and fell down at his feet, and besought him with tears to put away the mischief of Haman the Agagite, and his device that he had devised against the Jews. Then the king held out the golden scepter toward Esther. So Esther arose and stood before the king, and said, If it please the king, and if I have found favor in his sight, and the thing seem right before the king, and I be pleasing in his eyes, let it be written to reverse the letters devised by Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, which he wrote to destroy the Jews which are in all the king's provinces. For how can I endure to see the evil that shall come unto my people? Or how can I endure to see the destruction of my kindred? Then the king Ahasuerus said unto Esther the queen and Mordecai the Jew, Behold, I have given Esther the house of Haman, and him they have hanged upon the gallows, because he laid his hand upon the Jews. Write ye also for the Jews, as it liketh you, in the king's name, and seal it with the king's ring. For the writing which is written in the king's name, and sealed with the king's ring, may no man reverse. Then were the king's scribes called at that time in the 3rd month, that is, the month Sivan, on the 23rd day thereof, and it was written according to all that Mordecai commanded, unto the Jews, and to the lieutenants, and the deputies and rulers of the provinces, which are from India unto Ethiopia, and 127 provinces, unto every province according to the writing thereof, and unto every people after their language, and to the Jews according to their writing, and according to their language. And he wrote in the king Ahasuerus' name, and sealed it with the king's ring, and sent letters by posts on horseback, and riders on mules, camels, and young dromedaries, wherein the king granted the Jews which were in every city to gather themselves together, and to stand for their life, to destroy, to slay, and to cause to perish all the power of the people and province that would assault them, both little ones and women, and to take the spoil of them for a prey. Upon one day in all the provinces of King Ahasuerus, namely, upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar, the copy of the writing for a commandment to be given in every province was published unto all the people, and that the Jews should be ready against that day to avenge themselves on their enemies. So the post that rode upon the mules and camels went out, being hastened and pressed on by the king's commandment, and the decree was given at Shushan the palace. And Mordecai went out from the presence of the king in royal apparel of blue and white, and with a great crown of gold, and with a garment of fine linen and purple, and the city of Shushan rejoiced and was glad. The Jews had light and gladness and joy and honor. And in every province and in every city, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, the Jews had joy and gladness, a feast and a good day. And many of the people of the land became Jews, for the fear of the Jews fell upon them. And that's chapter 8. Jur says, what's a dromedary? A dromedary is also a camel. There's functionally 2 species of camel that remain unto us. The Bactrian camel and the dromedary camel. The Bactrian camel is the one with 2 humps and longer fur, and it's native to colder climates relative to the dromedary, which has 1 hump and shorter fur. And the way you can remember that is that the back of a Bactrian looks like the letter B turned on its side. B for Bactrian. Same for the dromedary. D for dromedary. Hashtag things I learned from Junk Shop. All right. Oh, all right. Take care, Angie. We'll see you around. Okay, so as somebody pointed out earlier, there's a lot of repetition here and some stuff that could have been compressed into a couple of verses and just taken up less space. All right, so here's the gist of the reason for all these messages and stuff. We did mention the last time we congregated, look at Junk Shop with the royal we. I did mention the last time we congregated when there was specifically mentioned something about the the decrees according to the laws of the Medes and Persians, which could not be revoked, which is like the Median or Persian royal equivalent of the Pope sitting on the fancy chair and speaking infallibly. Take care, Doc Fearsome. Thanks for joining us. That if the king wrote a special decree according to the laws of the Medes and Persians, not even future kings, I beg your pardon, not even future kings could overrule such a writing. And neither could the king who wrote the writing. So the king, after Esther tells him that about the genocide, is kind of at a quandary. At a quandary or in a quandary? In a quandary. And so Ahasuerus, most indecisive king ever, decides not to do anything. And Esther finds out, apparently the next day, or at some point down the line, that this genocide against her and her people has not been rescinded, nor has it been countermanded. So she goes unsummoned into the presence of King Ahasuerus, which, remember, is a capital offense. You have to be summoned into his presence, and the only way to not be killed as a result of going unsummoned into the king's presence is for him to extend his magic golden penis to you and for you to touch it in turn. So she goes all unbidden into the presence of the king, and he says, "Oh, look, it's my favorite wife." And he points his magic golden phallic thing at her, and she says, "I'm here with a special request." And he says, "What is it?" She says, "Well, here's the thing. You remember that genocide that Haman contrived, that got him all executed and shit?" He says, "Yeah, I remember. I gave you his house." She says, "Yeah, well, here's the thing. The time of the genociding fast approacheth." He says, "Oh, shit. Okay, well, here's what I'll do." And so he sends out speedy delivery to all of his 127 provinces and says, "Look, here's the deal. I can't counteract what I already said. So my royal servants and armies and shit are going to come for the Jews and try to exterminate them. But I hereby authorize the Jews to, without fear of retribution, defend themselves with lethal force and extreme prejudice against my royal servants and soldiers." And so upon hearing this, the hitherto in danger of extermination people throw a great big party. And when the when word of the new royal decree gets out, people start converting right, left, and sideways, because they're afraid and don't want to be genocided in turn. God, this book is weird. Chapter 9. It's like a Stephen King novel, this Book of Esther. It just keeps on going and keeps on going and keeps on going. And every time you think you've got a perfectly good ending point, nope, faked you out. There's more to come. Now in the 12th month, that is, the month Adar, on the 13th day of the same, when the king's commandment and his decree drew near to be put in execution, in the day that the enemies of the Jews hoped to have power over them, though it was turned to the contrary, that the Jews had rule over them that hated them, the Jews gathered themselves together in their cities throughout all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus to lay hand on such as sought their hurt, and no man could withstand them, for the fear of them fell upon all people. And all the rulers of the provinces, and the lieutenants, and the deputies, and officers of the king helped the Jews, because the fear of Mordecai fell upon them. For Mordecai was great in the king's house, and his fame went out throughout all the provinces, for this man Mordecai waxed greater and greater. Thus the Jews smote all their enemies with the stroke of the sword, and slaughter, and destruction, and did what they would unto those that hated them. And in Shushan the palace the Jews slew and destroyed 500 men, and Parshandatha, and Dalphon, and Aspatha, and Poratha, and Adalia, and Aridatha, and Parmashta, and Arisai, and Aridai, and Vajezatha. The 10 sons of Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the enemy of the Jews, slew they, but on the spoil laid they not their hand. On that day the number of those that were slain in Shushan the palace was brought before the king. And the king said unto Esther the queen, The Jews have slain and destroyed 500 men in Shushan the palace, and the 10 sons of Haman. What have they done in the rest of the king's provinces? Now what is thy petition? And it shall be granted thee. Or what is thy request further? And it shall be done. Then said Esther, If it please the king, let it be granted to the Jews which are in Shushan to do tomorrow also according unto this day's decree, and let Haman's 10 sons be hanged upon the gallows. And the king commanded it so to be done. And the decree was given at Shushan, and they hanged Haman's 10 sons. For the Jews that were in Shushan gathered themselves together on the 14th month also of the 14th day also of the month Adar, and slew 300 men at Shushan. But on the prey they laid not their hand. But the other Jews that were in the king's provinces gathered themselves together, and stood for their lives, and had rest for their enemies, and slew of their foes 70 and 5,000, but they laid not their hands on the prey. On the 13th day of the month Adar, and on the 14th day of the same, rested they, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. But the Jews that were in Shushan assembled together on the 13th day thereof, and on the 14th day thereof, and on the 15th day of the same they rested, and made it a day of feasting and gladness. Therefore the Jews of the villages that dwelt in the unwalled towns made the 14th day of the month Adar a day of gladness and feasting, and a good day, and of sending portions one to another. And Mordecai wrote these things, and sent letters unto all the Jews that were in all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus, both nigh and far, to establish this among them, that they should keep the 14th day of the month Adar, and the 15th day of the same, yearly, as the days wherein the Jews rested from their enemies, and the month which was turned unto them from sorrow to joy, and from mourning into a good day, that they should make them days of feasting and joy, and of sending portions one to another, and gifts to the poor. And the Jews undertook to do as they had begun, and as Mordecai had written unto them, because Haman, the son of Hammedatha the Agagite, the enemy of all the Jews, had devised against the Jews to destroy them, and had cast Pur, that is, the lot, to consume them and to destroy them. But when Esther came before the king, he commanded by letters that his wicked device, which he devised against the Jews, should return upon his own head, and that he and his sons should be hanged on the gallows. Wherefore they called these days Purim, after the name of Pur. Therefore, for all the words of this letter, and of that which they had seen concerning the matter, and which had come unto them, the Jews ordained, and took upon them, and upon their seed, and upon all such as joined themselves unto them, so as it should not fail, that they would keep these 2 days according to their writing, and according to their appointed time every year, and that these days should be remembered and kept throughout every generation, every family, every province, and every city, and that these days of Purim should not fail from among the Jews, nor the memorial of them perish from their seed. Then Esther the queen, the daughter of Abihail, and Mordecai the Jew, wrote with all authority to confirm this second letter of Purim. And he sent the letters unto all the Jews to the 127 provinces of the kingdom of Ahasuerus with words of peace and truth, to confirm these days of Purim in their times appointed, according as Mordecai the Jew and Esther the queen had enjoined them, and as they had decreed for themselves and for their seed the matter of the fastings and their cry. And the decree of Esther confirmed these matters of Purim, and it was written in the book. And there we have chapter 9. Holy cow. Okay, so more massacring. Because apparently the Jews are unpopular enough in Syria that despite the fact that they have explicitly been told by royal decree to defend themselves with lethal force against anyone who tries to kill them in accordance with the previous royal decree, there are still people willing to try to genocide them out of existence. So they try. It's Purim. And they do not prevail. The Jews instead prevail and do a great massacre, including of Haman's 10 sons, who want a little bit of the Old Testament style vengeance, but don't get it. And the king sends to Esther and says, you want anything else? I'm feeling generous. You have found favor in my sight. And also I feel a little bit stupid for not finding out what your ethnicity was in the first place. And also I feel bad for inciting a genocide against your people, according just to the word of the guy who's still hanging on the gallows in the backyard of the house that I gave you as a sort of apology / consolation prize. And she says, yes. Yes, I do have one other thing I'd like you to do. And that's that I feel my backyard is in need of further decoration. So I want you to take the dead bodies of Haman's 10 sons and hang them out there too, so I can look out the back window when I have my morning coffee and laugh. That's how it reads in the original. And then we have this rather tedious account of why the Feast of Purim, the Feast of Lots, occurs on Adar 14 and 15 rather than Adar 13, which is the day they were originally scheduled to be genocided out of existence. And that's that the fighting and the massacring went on for 2 days after the original day, or rather 1 day after the original day. And after the massacring wrapped on day 14, they started partying and didn't stop until sundown on day 15. Now, the massacring that happened in the capital city itself only lasted for Adar 13th, but the word that it was to stop apparently didn't filter out into the provinces for another couple of days, because you got to remember the Persian Empire was real fucking big. I mean, 127 provinces is no slouch, even by Bronze Age standards. But anyway, word finally comes that the massacring and the massacring in return is to wrap. And that's why they celebrate the Feast of Lots on Adar 14 and 15 rather than 13 and 14, or just on 13, which would have made more sense. And included in this chapter is this condensation of the entire book into a space of a handful of verses in the middle of chapter 9, just to prove to you that whoever wrote it could have done it at any point, could have consolidated and just elected not to, and put in all kinds of extraneous detail and repetition instead. Again, the posthumous display of Haman's 10 sons in revenge mysteriously did not make it into the children's picture books from which we as little ones were taught. Imagine that. Ah, the eternal refrain of humanity. Aunt Jura says, is this story real or fiction? Now that's a real fucking good question, isn't it? That's the question that haunts this entire text. Now, having said that, we know that Ahasuerus was a real king. There is extra biblical evidence for the reign of Ahasuerus. I don't know that there's anything other than intertextual biblical evidence for the existence of Mordecai or Haman or the genocide plotted against the Jews or the origins of the Feast of Purim. Having said that, I'm not aware of any Haman mythicists, but you never know. It's not a particularly far-fetched story, though it is it's a little heavy on the persecution mythology. Now, having said that, it's an incredibly specific story to explain the origins of this feast. Don't know. That's the short answer. I don't know. That's what I should have said to begin with. But wait, there's more. What in God's green hair can possibly still be left of this story? Because remember, there's a 10th chapter. Buckle up, y'all. There's no telling what's going to happen. And the king Ahasuerus laid a tribute upon the land and upon the isles of the sea, and all the acts of his power and of his might, and the declaration of the greatness of Mordecai, whereunto the king advanced him, are they not written in the book of the chronicles of the kings of Media and Persia? For Mordecai the Jew was next unto King Ahasuerus, and great among the Jews, and accepted of the multitude of his brethren, seeking the wealth of his people, and speaking peace to all his seed. And that's the end of chapter 10 in the book of Esther. All right, well, that's evidence, if ever there was evidence, that the chapter breaks in this book are entirely fucking arbitrary and likely indicate where some medieval scribe took a cigarette break. Because there's absolutely no fucking reason for that not to be included in chapter 9. It's, what was that, like 3 verses? Yes, 3 verses. There is absolutely no fucking reason chapter 9 should not be 35 verses long rather than 32, and there's no reason to have a chapter break for chapter 10. No reason whatsoever, in the slightest, at all. Aunt Jur says, well, that was a wild ride. Yeah. Oh my God, no kidding. Never Again says, I want to read all the stuff they edited out a very long time ago. That is a lovely little design on your avatar. I've never been able to quite make it out. I always see it super small in the corner of the screen or on a screen that's no bigger than this. So I've never, probably means I need to click people's stuff up on the screen more often so I can see what their thingamy is. Yeah. Oh, I mean, if this is the stuff they left in, imagine what all got left out. Jesus. Oh, you did that. Lovely. Yeah. So mostly at chapter 10, I'm just a little pissed off because all it is a postscript. It's literally a postscript saying, and if you want to know more, check out the Median and Persian archives, because there's more shit that Ahasuerus did that wasn't specifically just Judeo-centric. But it's not important to us, so it's being left out for our purposes. And if you want to know more, because this is just the story of the origin of the Feast of Purim, so if Ahasuerus tickled your curiosity bone, here's where you can go in the probably in the Library of Alexandria, right, to find out more. And that's the story of Esther. Wasn't that fun? Y'all know what's next? Job. So, come back and join us on Friday, where we will be launching into one of the longest books of the Bible, after having just gotten out of one of the shortest. All things balance. All things in moderation. All right. Well, thank y'all so much for joining me today. I appreciate each and every one of you, especially those of you who came back to see us a second time after the disastrous first attempt at a stream earlier. Julie points out that that the book of Job is the oldest book of the Bible. Yes, yes, that is true. Mark's getting a little sleep deprived, I think. Coming in with the jokes. That was pretty good, actually. I would not have come up with that, and that's just fucking fun. All right. So, again, thank you all for being here. Special thank you to my fantabulous patrons, many of whom were able to join us today, some of whom were not. We'll see y'all again for Improv Bible Study, same time on Friday. And we'll be doing our mental health stream Thursday, tomorrow, at the same time as today. 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. UK, 9 p.m. Belgium, and whatever the fuck time it is for my Australian friends. No?
There might be a time correction on the mental health stream.
There might be a time correction. Y'all make sure you've got your notifications turned on and or are members of the Discord.
And it's my fault.
That's all right. We'll figure it out. All right. Well, as we always say before we wrap things up here, everybody take care. Everybody be safe. Stand against hate. And we'll see you again soon. Bye now.